as you know. Use their ballroom.
Oh, hold on. Quick. What I want to do is work into the time of the bombing of Pearl Harbor and beyond. Before Pearl Harbor, you were gearing towards being a driver? Is that what you were doing? What was your plans before Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, before Pearl Harbor, I was driving a truck. Well, I take that back. That was before I went to work in a banana house. When I went to work in a banana house, I became the dispatcher and a salesman. And I stayed there in that capacity until I was drafted. And when I was drafted, I went to Fort Warren, Wyoming. And it was cold. It was in January. And we'd walk guard duty. And man, you put on every piece of clothing that you could put on. Because out there in Wyoming, heck, it was nothing for the weather dropped down to zero. So, and since we come from the West Coast, our blood is thin. And we felt the cold more than the other guys did. I couldn't put enough clothes on when I went on guard duty. Then after Fort Warren, they shipped us to Fort Omaha because they didn't know what to do with us after basic training.
How did you get to Wyoming? Did you take a train or did you go by
Yeah, they took a train
bus or something?
and they shipped us.
Okay.
We didn't have to have the windows down, the shade down or nothing like when they evacuated the people. But I remember taking a red car from downtown Los Angeles to San Pedro to be inducted at Fort MacArthur. And from Fort MacArthur, they shipped us by rail and cars to Fort Warren, Wyoming.
Now this was in the beginning of 42?
This was in 42.
What happened how did you hear about Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor, let's see. It happened on a Sunday, still remember. And my present wife and I, we were on a date. We went to a movie that day afternoon. We were going to a movie and we heard that, hey, somebody said Pearl Harbor was bombed. So anyway, we went on to the movie and came back and we didn't pay too much attention right then, because we were interested in going to see this movie. So on the way, after we got home, then it hit us that, we're back in war already. Then that's how I received the news about Pearl Harbor. But I didn't pay much attention till the draft notice come and tell me to report to Fort MacArthur, which I did. Then after being inducted, I went to Fort Warren, Wyoming. Then after I finished about 12 weeks of basic there, they didn't know what to do with us. So they shipped maybe 6 or 7 of us in this group, Japanese Americans, to Fort Omaha, Nebraska, which was the Corps area headquarters for that area. So we were there for about 10 days, and they shipped us to Fort Riley, Kansas.
Now this time you just married your wife?
I was already married.
Okay, that was, but just before, did you have plans to get married before, or when you got drafted, is that when you decided?
Well, I was married 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor. See, Pearl Harbor was on Sunday. We got married Saturday night 2 weeks later. And that's what, almost 60 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Years.
Can you stop there for a second? Right after Pearl Harbor up until the point where you're drafted, after Pearl Harbor, did you feel any effects of being Japanese?
No, not really. I wasn't, well, we didn't wander far, and I wasn't out that long, because I was, after a month after Pearl Harbor, I was in the service. But during that month, I did not feel prejudiced, because I kept living my normal life, and that's the way it went. We'd work all week, get drunk on Saturday, spend all your money, broke. Sunday night, we'd be broke. Then we'd be living on credit for the rest of the week and get paid, pay off your bills, drink up the rest of it. And we lived a kind of pretty happy-go-lucky life, in those days. We weren't in I wasn't in what you call a gang, but I had a bunch that would back me up. And they worked for Minami up in Santa Maria. They used to work out in the field and they'd come in town once or twice a year and raise hell, get drunk, spend all their money, and then they'd go back to Santa Maria and go back to work. But over New Year's, they'd come in town. And if anybody hassled you between the years, we'd take it out on them when these guys came down. And so they knew that our group had the backing of the Santa Maria bunch, so they didn't bother us too much, even the other gangs. So that's how I was able to escape getting pounced on every once in a while.
When you got your draft notice, how did you feel, and how did your new wife, feel?
Well, I got my draft notice before I got married, so she knew that I was going to get drafted. But she resigned to me going in the Army. But we didn't know at that time that she was already pregnant. I mean, it wasn't a shotgun marriage, but my boy was born in camp. He was one of the first ones to be born in camp, my oldest son. He was born in Poston, Arizona. I was never in camp. So I visited Poston a couple of times. I visited Yamate once. The reason I visited Yamate was I was told that I could not go to Poston. Even though I had a furlough coming, it says you cannot go to the 4 western states. California, Arizona, Oregon, and Washington. I can go any place else. I can go to Washington, D.C. and blow up the Capitol if I wanted to, but I couldn't go to those 4 western states. And since Poston was in Arizona, I couldn't go there until just before we got ready to go overseas. And I got a chance to go there twice before I went overseas.
When you got drafted, did your father have anything to say? Do you remember having any discussion with him before you?
No, he just took me to the red car station and just wished me well. But there was no big scene or anything, because my dad and I were not that close, even though he raised me by himself, but he was so busy making a living that we never got that real close. But he was interned in Manzanar. And when my son was born in Poston, he managed to get transferred to Poston so he could be with his grandson. And so when I got my furlough, I was able to see him too. And I don't know, maybe that's part of the things that I miss growing up is not being close to my dad, even though we were one-on-one. But I think I turned out pretty good. The other thing is that when I was sent from Omaha to Fort Riley, Kansas. Fort Riley, Kansas is right in the center of the United States. You can go any way you go, you have a long way to go to get to the border and get out of the country. So I guess that's why they put us there. And then while we were in Fort Riley, I was in a place called Woodside. And when President Roosevelt came through Fort Riley, they had some of us in a barracks. And they put us in the barracks, and they said they got machine guns on both ends and don't come on. So we were in that barracks and nobody tried to go out because they said the machine guns are going to fire on you guys if you try to get out. Anyway, that incident passed without any trouble. And when Roosevelt left, then they let us out of the barracks. But we didn't have no guns, we didn't have anything, we couldn't have done anything. We weren't allowed to have guns.
Can you talk a little bit about that again? Can you explain exactly what was going on? Now, the president was going to come visit.
President Roosevelt came to visit Fort Riley, Kansas, on inspection, I guess. And when he came to Fort Riley, they put us in a barracks, a few of us, and they had machine guns on both ends of the barracks where the doorway is, and he told us don't come out. So we were in this barrack while all the while that President Roosevelt was in that camp. And when he left, well, then they let us out. But there was no way that we could have harmed President Roosevelt because we weren't issued guns or anything. We didn't even have bayonets. If we had to fight, well, we'd have to use our rakes and shovels, I guess, because that's all we had.
Do you think that they were, they did that? Why do you think they put you in there? Was it so they didn't see? So then President Roosevelt didn't see you, or did they think that you were going to harm him in some way?
Well, they figured we were might try to harm him for him putting us in camp, incarcerating our families. I don't know what the reasoning that the camp commander had, but not all of us were put in those barracks, just this one barrack. So I guess it all depends on the company that we were in, where we were at. But from that day on, I felt real bad because, I'm here in the Army to fight for a country, and here they put us in a barracks and turn machine guns on us and tell us don't come out. You kind of lose fight. Then when they shipped us to Mississippi, Camp Shelby, they didn't tell us where we were going. They said, you guys are going to get shipped out. You guys are all going to be corporal and better. I said, hey, what goes on? Nobody could figure out. Anyway, nobody liked our life what we were leading in Kansas, so we figured, well, it couldn't be any worse. So we went along with it. And sure enough, all these guys that were from Camp Fort Riley went to Mississippi. They became all corporal or better. They become the cavalry for the 442. And there were other Japanese American soldiers from different camps. They were always also shipped to Camp Shelby, and they became part of the cadre. So the Japanese Americans are, I think, there are 15 of us in each company, assigned to each company, to start each company. I was assigned to E Company, and we had first sergeant, mess sergeant, 4 platoon sergeants, supply sergeant, company clerk, 2 cook's helpers, 1 machine gun mortar section sergeant, and a machine gun section mortar. So anyway, there were 15 of us that started E Company. Well, we didn't have no infantry training, most of us. So we had a crash course about 2 months, showing us how to fire weapons, take them apart, how to lead men. And so anyway, it was a real crash course. We had to study pretty hard for 2 months. And then when the people from Hawaii come, they were assigned to various companies. And at that time, I think we had total about 150 men in my company. So they started to train, and we still didn't have enough people to make a company. So then they brought the people from the mainland camps that volunteered. Then they were assigned to our company. Each company got about another 50 men to make the 200 men that each rifle company is allowed. And when they first got there, you know, there was a lot of friction. Because the Hawaii people, their lifestyle is different than our lifestyle. They're easygoing, and you know, like our people, well, they didn't talk much. They're just coming out of camp, and I guess they're kind of embarrassed about being put in camp. And the Hawaii people, well, they had money. They were working civil service jobs and stuff in Hawaii that paid pretty good. And the people from the camp, well, they left what money they had. They left it with their parents or their wives. And they came to camp and they didn't have no money. When they came to Camp Shelby, then when they got paid, they sent part of that money back to the people in camp. So the mainland boys didn't have a whole lot of money. And I guess the Hawaii people, when we get paid, they'd go by to the PX and buy cases of beer. And they'd have a good time that payday. Well, you know, the mainland boys couldn't join in because they didn't buy the beer. So I guess the Hawaii people thought, hey, these guys are cheap, you know. They didn't realize what the mainland people were going through. So the regimental commander had a good idea. So why not send some of the people from the camp to one of the relocation centers for a dance? So they took so many people from each company, put them in a truck, and they drove them to Camp Aurora, Arkansas, where they met the girls, and the girls had a dance, and they come back. Well, when they were going, they were real, you know, gung-ho. Then coming back, they're kind of sober, because they realized what the Japanese Americans in the States were going through in those camps. They were put behind barbed wires, and they had machine gun towers, and the way the people tell it, the towers were up there to protect the Japanese Americans. But why were the guns pointed in instead of out? See, that's what, so you can't tell me that they were there put to protect the Japanese Americans, because the guns are pointed in instead of out.
Did
And
you
then,
go with them to the? Did you go with them to the camps, or was it mostly
no,
just the island?
I did not go to the camps.
Did any of the mainland?
They took people from Hawaii,
Oh, so it was just them
so
that went over there.
so they could experience what the Japanese American people that volunteered from camp went through.
Right. Did you ever talk to any of the island boys after they came back? Did you ever talk to them personally about what they saw and how they felt? Did they mention anything?
You know, I'm pretty close to Senator Inoue, and I go to a lot of functions that he makes speeches at, and he told about his experience when he went to one of those relocations, and he told us that would he have volunteered if he was put in camp? See, he says that's a question I cannot answer. See? So it's anyway. After the boys that came back from the dance and roar, things started to change. Their attitude toward the Kotunk started to change. They started to respect him a little bit more, you know. And then it really didn't come together until we started to get into a fight overseas, when we started to fight. When we got into combat, then the whole thing changed, you know, because we depended on each other for our lives. You know, it wasn't just, I'm from the States and I'm from Hawaii. No, it was just, you know, everybody got to get their act together, and we all came together. So, anyway, one time we had a dance at Camp Shelby. We brought the girls from Roar in trucks to Camp Shelby, and they were housed in a guest house, you know, and I think they stayed 2 nights. And the people, the guys, they ate with the different companies, so many girls to a company, and they had their own mess facility too. And I was assigned at one time to furnish KPs for them. Boy, I didn't have no trouble getting volunteers, man. Everybody wanted to be KP. That's one time that everybody was volunteering for KP duty. But we've had a hard time with Hawaii people. But I think it finally worked out, you know, where we respected each other, and they've come to know what the mainland people went through. But that's a hard part of it. We had to go through that turmoil to get to that point. You know, if a guy didn't like his sergeant or something, he wouldn't fight the sergeant. He'd have somebody else, his buddy from different companies, come over and at night, and they'd beat the sergeant up. You know, the sergeant couldn't press charges because he didn't know who was in the bunch, because it wasn't his people that beat him up. See, it was from other companies. So it got so bad that one time our battalion commander called the whole battalion out, and he chewed our butts out, you know. He says, "You guys are going to be fighting for your lives pretty soon. And here you are fighting among yourselves. You guys should be protecting your buddies, not, if somebody from outside of your company come, you should help your buddy, protect your buddy." So that kind of eased tension up a little bit, but it wasn't until after we hit combat that everything came together.
I want to back up just a little bit. When you were in your first basic training and you heard about President Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066. How did you feel? I mean, that affected your wife, your father.
Well, I says, hey, what are they doing to me? You know, here I am in the army, and they're going to put my mother and my father and my wife in camp. I says, that's not right. You know, I'm already in the service. And I felt that I was wrong at that time, that I shouldn't be put in that kind of position where my family was going to be put in camp when I'm already in the service. But who knows if they would have been on the outside by themselves and the rest of the people put in camp, what would have happened to them? Because they would have had nobody to turn to protect them.
Was your wife by herself? Did she have family? Did she go to...
Well, my wife, father passed away when she was quite young. So the mother and I think she had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. And they all went to camp. So my wife joined them. I went with them to Poston. But because I didn't have nobody for her to go with. She would have went where my dad was. There would have just been the 2 of them. So she felt more comfortable by going with her parents.
Did you ever write letters, or did you hear from her through letters about the whole situation, about having to move and having...
Well, there was not too much said about, you know, evacuation, all that. We wrote how much we missed each other and that both of us were well and stuff like that, but we never discussed evacuation too much. And then there was a period of uncertainty, you know, where I didn't know where she was at that time until I finally heard from her. But there's a lot of things that we went through that the Sanseis and the Yonseis will not have to go through. I think the hardest part was for our Issei parents. You know, they worked hard all their lives. They were law-abiding citizens, and to be picked up and put in camp like that for no reason at all, I think it was a shame. Yeah, because there was a time that I think had to do with my dad's passing away. When he was in Manzanar, I think he got a touch of TB there. And when he came to Poston, and after he got out of camp, he had to go to a sanitarium. So I never got to see my dad very much because I was working hard to try and support my family. And my dad was in the sanitarium for TB. And he never did get out of that TB facility. Passed away in there. So I kind of blame the concentration camp for him catching TB in one of the relocation centers.
Okay, we're gonna change tapes right now.